Hi pals and welcome to a new video. I'm Kate and today I'm talking about my Spring TBR. I have a Brontë reread in here, some classic crime and some First World War historical fiction. There's something about seasonal reading goals that I really love, but especially spring ones because this is probably my favourite time of the year and it really feels like the year starts properly as spring begins. So I've chosen some books that I really want to get to. I have tried to leave myself a little bit of breathing space to go down like rabbit holes and like to have kind of reading whims. So this won't be everything that I'll be reading over spring, but it is the books that I've had on my mind that I want to get to for quite a while. Let's go ahead and get started with my classic reread, which is Villette by Charlotte Brontë. During all of the coverage of Wuthering Heights recently, I read a Substack post by Laura Thompson, who's one of my favourite literary biographers, who said that for her, Villette is the ultimate kind of Brontë masterpiece. I think I've said on the channel before, and currently I stand by it, that I think the best work by any Brontë sister is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. That being said, I haven't read this for quite a long time and it will almost be like coming to it completely fresh. I do adore Charlotte Brontë. The thing I can't decide with Villette is whether I should listen to it on audiobook or track down a copy on my Kobo. I have this English library paperback edition. I've come to really dislike these editions, and so I may well, after I finish this, treat myself to a new copy and then donate this one. But Villette will be my big spring reread. Next up is a Persephone book, The Crooked Cross by Sally Carson. I don't currently own a physical copy of this. I do have it on my Kobo. This is the Persephone book that everybody seems to be reading at the moment. And I've had it on my radar since it was published last year, and a fair few of you have said that you're reading this or you've recommended this to me in the comments. This was published in the 1930s and chronicles the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany. A Persephone book set in a time period I absolutely adore. This honestly couldn't be more up my street, and I think that there is a sequel to this called The Prisoner being published by Persephone in April, so I'm hoping if I read this relatively soon I'll be able then to order the sequel as well. From the Second World War to the First World War, one of my non-fiction reads over spring that I really want to get to is The World of Yesterday by Stefan Zweig. I think that this is a mixture of memoir and essays. From Stefan Zweig, I've previously read Messages from a Lost World, which I think has some crossover with this one, and Beware of Pity. He's one of my favourite European writers. I know that I really enjoy his writing style. This one, The World of Yesterday, I think mainly chronicles the fall of the Austro-Hungarian Empire during the First World War, but it also goes up to the beginning of the Second World War. One of the things I'm trying to do this year is group my reading more thematically, so it has a little bit more depth. And a classic I've been meaning to reread for quite a while is the Radetzky March by Joseph Roth. This is basically a fictionalized account of the world of yesterday. I've read this before. I went on holiday to Vienna a good few years ago now, and I read this when I was on that trip and I absolutely adored it. This chronicles the life of a family and the fall of the Habsburg Empire. It goes up to, it covers like the same time period, so the First World War, and it goes a little bit further as well. I have a feeling, or I think it will be really good for me to tackle this one. This is my priority, and then I think I will also head to this one as well. I found in my first reading that this is definitely one that we'll need a reread to kind of get a full grasp of, so I'm quite excited for these two. Sticking with the First World War theme, I have The Remembered Soldier by Anjet Daanje. I think that's how you pronounce it. I first came across this book on Shelley Swearingen's historical fiction roundup videos. It's since been longlisted for the Booker International Prize. I think that this is translated from the Dutch by David McKay. And this is set just after the First World War and follows a soldier who has lost his memory and is living in a psychiatric asylum. And from what I know about this, a kind of advertisement is placed in a newspaper, and women like visit this soldier to see if he is their kind of missing husband. I think this focuses on quite a lot on memory, which is one of the things that I love to read about in fiction. It's part of the reason why I love Kazuo Ishiguro so much. Previously from the Booker International list, I read War and Turpentine by Stefan Hertmans, which is translated from the Flemish, I think. That is one of my favourite First World War novels ever. And so if I like The Remembered Soldier, this could set up a grand tradition of me always reading First World War novels that are on the Booker International list. Again, I think I'm going to really enjoy this one. It's quite a lengthy novel. I do also want to make a little bit of an effort to read more translated European fiction, as that has fallen by the wayside for me a little bit, and I do generally really enjoy myself when I read like German, Austrian, French fiction. So fingers crossed for this one. Again, I have very high hopes. Right, next on the list is a book that I'm saving for a specific trip I'm taking in May, and it is Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. In May, I'm going to Silverdale to visit my dad. Silverdale is like a coastal village in Lancashire, almost when you're up to the Lake District, and it is where Elizabeth Gaskell used to holiday in the summertime, and she actually wrote, I think she wrote part of Roth while she was there. It's a really beautiful little village, and I really want to read Wives and Daughters while I'm there. I adore Elizabeth Gaskell. North and South remains one of my favourite novels ever. I'm also very fond of her short stories and of Cranford. I've never read this before. I've always wanted to. I think reading this combined with Villette over Spring will be absolutely perfect. I have seen an adaptation of Wives and Daughters before, so I do vaguely know the plot, which is kind of why I've held off reading it. I'm going to be away over the May Day bank holiday, so I'm going to save this one for then, and fingers crossed that the weather is good also. And finally, I've also planned to read a couple of classic crime novels. The first one is Answer in the Negative by Henrietta Hamilton, which is actually being published the Thursday following when this video will go live. It's being republished as part of the Mermaid Collection series. This series has a very similar vibe to Persephone. I think there's 8 books in the series so far, and it's focusing on publishing neglected fiction novels by women writers from, I think it's the mid to late 20th century. The ones they've published so far all look absolutely brilliant. I have my eye on the Letters Cooper one especially, but I read the synopsis for this one. It's a murder mystery written in the 50s. It has a pair of like amateur detectives. It's set around Fleet Street, which is the kind of like the heart of the newspaper industry in London. It sounds wonderful. It's introduced by Sophie Hannah, who I really trust. So I'm going to get this one on my Kobo, and then if I like it, I will treat myself to a physical copy. And I also want to get to Cat and Mouse by Christianna Brand. This one I'm also saving for a trip. I'm going to Wales with work in April. This one is set in Wales. Last year, in one of my classic crime for winter videos, I read London Particular by Christianna Brand, and I really liked it. I bought this one almost straight after reading that, and it sat on my shelf for a couple of months. I do really want to get to it, and I just think this will be so perfect to read in Wales, as I'm staying in a really quite remote village in like a historic inn. I just think reading some classic crime at the same time will be so perfect. This one is meant to be, I think, a little bit experimental. She also has a ton of novels for me to work through, so I think this one will be great. And before I end the video, I also wanted to mention some ongoing author projects that I am working on. I am currently rereading all of George Orwell's fiction and non-fiction in publication order. I've just finished A Clergyman's Daughter, which I have mixed feelings on, and my next novel will be a reread for me, and it is Keep the Aspidistra Flying. Agatha Christie wise, I'll be reading The Big Four, which is my next Prowrow. I have no idea if I've ever read this. I don't think I have, but very often with Christie, I get confused about what I've read and what I haven't, and usually I get like a quarter of the way through, a third of the way through, and I realise that this is sounding very familiar to me and I have actually read it, but I think I'm coming to this one completely fresh. I'm currently reading Dickens in publication order. I'm currently making good progress with Oliver Twist. I'm alternating reading his novels with rereading the Barchester Chronicles by Anthony Trollope. My next one will be Barchester Towers, which is the second one. When I finished Oliver Twist, I will head to this. I can't decide if I want to read the physical copy or listen to the audiobooks, which I adore. So I'll be alternating Dickens with the Barchester Chronicles. That gives me something to always look forward to over spring, summer, and actually for the rest of the year. So I'll be making my way through those also. Right, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I always love to hear from you in the comments, and I would especially love to know what you're planning on reading over spring, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!